You've probably heard algebra is tough. But what if I told you it's just a language? A way to describe patterns, relationships, and even the world around us. It's not about numbers or symbols. It's about understanding how things change and connect. And guess what? You already know more than you think. You'll see how algebra isn't about solving for x. It's about unlocking patterns that shape our daily lives, from music to space. So, let's start with something simple, something you already know. Because math isn't scary. It's just a little bit magical. Ready to begin? Let's dive into the first beat of this journey, where math meets magic.
So, what exactly are we talking about? Algebra is like a secret language that helps us solve problems using symbols and equations. It's not just about letters and numbers, it's about finding patterns and relationships. At its core, algebra is about using variables to represent unknown values. Instead of asking what is 3 plus 5, you ask what is x plus 5, and learn how to solve for x. It's like a puzzle, where you have to figure out what the missing piece is. Algebra teaches you how to take a problem, break it down, and find the answer step by step. You'll use numbers, letters, and symbols to describe real-world situations, like how much money you need to save, or how long it will take to travel somewhere. And the best part, algebra is everywhere. It's in your phone, your apps, even in the way you play games. It's a tool that helps you think clearly and solve problems in life. So in the next section, we're going to break down exactly what you need to do in just 15 minutes to start learning algebra. No stress, no pressure, just a few simple steps. Algebra isn't just about solving equations. It's the language of patterns, and patterns are everywhere. Think about how your phone uses math to predict your next move, or how music relies on rhythm and repetition. When you learn algebra, you're actually learning to think like a problem solver. It's a skill that helps you make smarter decisions, whether you're budgeting, planning a trip, or even cooking. And let's be honest, knowing algebra can feel like a superpower. It gives you the tools to understand the world in a deeper way, and it's way more impressive than you think. So even if you're not planning to become a math whiz, learning algebra helps you see the world more clearly and gives you the confidence to tackle anything that comes your way. You don't need to be a genius to learn algebra. All you need is a little curiosity and the willingness to try. And trust me, it's way more useful than you probably realize. Algebra didn't start with equations or variables. It began thousands of years ago with ancient civilizations like the Babylonians, who solved problems using methods that look a lot like algebra today. Then, around 300 BCE, the Greek mathematician Diophantus wrote the first algebraic equations in a more structured way, using symbols and letters to represent unknowns. Fast forward to the 9th century, and Al-Khwarizmi, a Persian mathematician, wrote a groundbreaking book called Algebra, which literally means the balancing of things. That's where the word algebra comes from. Over the centuries, algebra evolved through the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and into the modern era, becoming the foundation of math, science, and technology. So even though algebra feels new, it's built on centuries of smart people solving problems. And now, you're about to learn it in just 15 minutes. Algebra is like a secret code that helps us solve puzzles with numbers. It's not magic, it's just a way to figure out what's missing. Imagine you have a box and inside it is a number. We don't know what it is, but we can guess by using clues. That's algebra. Instead of saying I don't know the number, we use a letter like X to stand in for it. That's how we start solving the puzzle. Algebra is like a game of guessing and checking. You try a number, see if it works, and keep going until you crack the code. It's not about being fast, it's about being curious and patient. Every time you solve a puzzle, you're getting smarter. Okay, let's start with the setup. Algebra isn't magic. It's just a way to solve problems using numbers and symbols. Think of it like a puzzle where you're trying to figure out what the missing piece is. First, you need to understand what variables are. Variables are like placeholders for numbers we don't know yet. They're usually letters like X or Y, and they represent the unknown in the equation. You'll also need to practice working with equations. Start with simple ones and don't worry if you make mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process. Finally, remember that algebra is a tool. It helps you solve real-world problems, like figuring out how much money you need for a trip, or how long a job will take. So with the right setup, you're ready to start learning. Just take it one step at a time, and before you know it, you'll be solving equations like a pro. Now that we've set up the equation, the next step is to find the missing piece. Think of it like solving a puzzle, where you need to figure out what number goes in the blank to make the whole thing balance. To do this, we use something called inverse operations. If the equation has addition, we use subtraction to undo it. It's like unwrapping a present. You start by taking off the wrapping paper. After we subtract 3 from both sides, the equation becomes x equals 4. That means the missing number is 4, and the equation is now balanced again. It's like the puzzle finally fits together perfectly. This step shows how algebra works. You follow the rules, you keep things balanced, and you solve for the unknown. It's not magic, it's logic in action. And that's step 2, understanding the mechanism. It's all about keeping things fair, using inverse operations and solving for the unknown. We're not done yet, but we're off to a great start. So here's the clever twist. Once you've mastered the basics, you start seeing patterns everywhere. Algebra isn't just about solving equations, it's about spotting relationships in real life. Imagine you're trying to figure out how long it will take to walk to the store. That's an algebra problem in disguise, just like when you're figuring out how many cookies you can make with a certain amount of flour. That's the real power of algebra. It helps you solve problems you didn't even know were math problems. And once you see the patterns, it's like unlocking a new way of thinking. So don't be intimidated by the symbols. Algebra is a language that helps you describe the world around you. And the more you use it, the more it starts to make sense. In the next beat, we're going to show you how to turn these patterns into equations. It's like turning a mystery into a puzzle, and you're the detective. At the heart of algebra is a simple, elegant idea. Numbers and letters are just different ways to represent the same thing. Think of it like a language where x is just a placeholder for any number you want. This is why algebra feels like magic. You're not just solving for numbers, you're solving for patterns. It's like unlocking a secret code that describes how things change. Math isn't just about getting the right answer, it's about understanding the logic behind it. Algebra gives you a way to describe relationships between numbers with clarity and precision. Every equation you solve is like a tiny discovery. You're not just working through a problem, you're learning how the world works in a way that's both beautiful and practical. So when you study algebra, you're not just memorizing steps. You're learning to see the invisible patterns that shape everything from physics to computer science. Imagine you're trying to build a tower out of blocks, but every time you stack a block, someone comes and randomly takes one away. That's algebra. Sometimes things change, but you still have to figure out what's left. You don't know exactly when the block will disappear, but you can still plan for it. Just like in algebra, you have to solve for the unknown, even when things are shifting around you. The blocks are like numbers and variables. Sometimes they're fixed, sometimes they're unknown. But if you know the rules, you can figure out what's going on, even when things are moving. Algebra isn't about predicting the future. It's about understanding the patterns and rules that make the world work, just like how you learn to stack blocks without someone messing with your tower. So don't be scared of the unknown. Algebra is like a game of building and rebuilding. Just keep going and you'll find your way to the solution. You know that part where the math starts to feel like magic? It's not magic. It's just a pattern you haven't seen yet. Algebra is full of these hidden connections that make everything click once you spot them. Sometimes it feels like the problem is impossible, until you realize it's just a new version of something you already know. That's the real trick, finding the familiar in the unfamiliar. You don't have to see the whole path at once. Just take one small step and soon you'll be walking the whole way. It's not about speed, it's about progress. The part that sounds made up, it's real. It's the moment when algebra clicks, not because it's easy, but because you've finally seen it for what it is. A puzzle you're ready to solve. Myth number 1 is that you need to be a math genius to learn algebra. That's not true at all. Algebra is for everyone, no matter your background or confidence level. You don't have to be born with math skills. What matters is how hard you work and how willing you are to ask questions and try again. Even if you struggled with math before, you can still learn algebra. It's all about starting small and building from there. You're not alone in this. Millions of people have learned algebra and they started exactly where you are now. You can too. So let's stop believing the myth. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to be ready to learn. Myth number 2 is that you need to be a math genius to learn algebra. That's not true at all. Algebra is a skill like riding a bike. It takes practice, but it's totally doable. What makes someone good at algebra isn't magic. It's persistence and the right approach. You don't have to be born with it, you just have to work at it. You're not failing at math, you're just not using the right tools. Algebra is like a puzzle, and once you get the pieces, it all starts to make sense. The key is to believe in yourself and take it one equation at a time. You've got this, and I'm here to help you along the way. Ever noticed how your phone app calculates the best route? It's using algebra to find the shortest path, just like solving an equation for the fastest way home. When you split a pizza among friends, you're actually dividing numbers, a basic algebraic operation, to make sure everyone gets a fair share. Even when you're cooking, you're using algebra, adjusting measurements, scaling recipes up or down, all based on proportional relationships. Your bank app uses algebra to calculate interest, showing how your money grows over time, just like a math problem with variables and time as the unknown. Even simple things like planning a budget or splitting a bill, all of it is algebra in disguise, making your everyday life a little more mathematical. Let's try a real-world example that's actually harder than it seems. Imagine you're planning a road trip, and you need to figure out how much gas you'll need for the entire journey. You know the distance is 300 miles, and your car gets 25 miles per gallon. But there's also a 10% chance of traffic delays that might add 20 miles to your trip. So you have to calculate the base gas needed, then factor in the extra distance from traffic. It's not just about division, it's about thinking through all the variables. This is why algebra isn't just about solving equations. It's about making sense of the world around you, even when things get a little messy. You've cracked the code, now it's time to go all in. Algebra isn't just about solving equations, it's about thinking like a mathematician, breaking problems into pieces and seeing the bigger picture. The real power of algebra comes from its versatility. It's not just for math class, it's the language of science, engineering, and even art. Master it, and you're unlocking a whole new world of possibilities. Now, take what you've learned and push it further. Try harder problems, explore more complex patterns, and let curiosity lead the way. That's how you break records. You've got the tools, the knowledge, and the drive. Now it's time to own it. Take algebra to the next level and show everyone what you're made of. Sometimes, even when you're trying your best, things just don't go as planned. Maybe the numbers don't add up or the equation refuses to make sense. That's okay, it's part of the learning process. You might feel stuck, like you're staring at a puzzle with no pieces to fit. But remember, confusion is a sign you're actually thinking, not just going through the motions. What matters isn't that everything goes perfectly, it's how you respond when it doesn't. Take a deep breath, rewind, and try again. You've got this. Even the best learners make mistakes. The key is not to let them define your progress. Mistakes are just clues that help you learn better next time. So if things go wrong, don't panic. Just take a moment, reassess, and keep moving forward. You're not alone in this. Every learner has faced the same challenges. You'll hear a lot of promises, but the truth is, algebra isn't a magic shortcut. It's a tool, and like any tool, it requires practice and patience. No one tells you that learning algebra is like learning a new language. It takes time to understand the grammar, the syntax, and the meaning behind the symbols. The real downside, you might feel like you're falling behind. But remember, algebra is a skill, and skills take time to build. So don't let the brochure fool you. Learning algebra is worth it, but it's not a quick fix. It's a journey, and you're already on the right track. So how did humans even figure out algebra in the first place? It wasn't just one person with a flash of genius. It was a long, slow process of solving real problems. They started with simple questions like, if I have 5 apples and I give 2 away, how many do I have left? And built up from there. They realized that by keeping things balanced, they could solve for unknowns, like how many stones are in the bag if the scale is even. This idea of balancing equations was the key to unlocking algebra, and it all started with real-life problems people wanted to solve. So algebra wasn't just about numbers. It was about understanding how to find the unknown in a world full of questions. Okay, so here's a weird edge case. What if the equation has a variable in the denominator? Like you're trying to solve for x, but x is in the bottom of a fraction. That's super strange, but it's totally possible. To solve it, you have to get rid of that fraction first. Multiply both sides by the denominator to cancel it out. That way, you can finally get x by itself. Once you solve the equation, you have to check your answer. If your solution makes the denominator 0, it's not valid. That's a trap you can fall into if you're not careful. So even though it's weird, this case is important. It teaches you to be careful with variables in denominators and to always double-check your answers. And that's it for the weird edge case. Algebra can be weird, but with a little care, you can handle even the strangest of situations. What if we didn't just follow the rules but broke them on purpose? That's where real understanding starts. Let's play with algebra like it's a puzzle, not a test. Imagine taking a simple equation and flipping it upside down like magic. What happens? You start seeing connections you never noticed before. Try rewriting the equation in a different language or even a fictional one. This helps you see the structure, not just the symbols. By breaking the rules on purpose, you're not cheating, you're learning. You're discovering how algebra really works underneath the surface. So next time you see an equation, don't just solve it. Ask, what if we messed with this? You might just unlock a whole new way of thinking. Think about when you learned to ride a bike. At first it felt unstable, like you were balancing on a tightrope. But once you got the hang of it, it became second nature. Algebra is like that. It starts tricky, but with practice it becomes intuitive. Just like riding a bike, algebra is about finding balance. You're not just solving equations, you're learning how to manipulate numbers and variables to get to a solution. It's like learning to steer and keep your center of gravity. Every time you solve an algebra problem, you're like a rider adjusting your balance. You're making small changes, adding or subtracting, multiplying or dividing, until you find the right path. And just like riding a bike, the more you practice, the more confident you. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.